you ever watched. A Coin Toss.
Why are you getting so upset? This is not about you.
Yes, it is. You are a human affront to all women, and I am a woman.
Of all the gin joints in all the towns in all the world, she walks into mine.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are tonight's entertainment.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Fleming Film Show. We got a really good episode today because we're discussing our movies. Unfortunately, Justin isn't here because he's on holiday in the Caribbean. But joining me today is Cody House. Hello, Cody.
Hey, Robbie. Thanks for having me back, and hello to anyone that's listening.
Yeah, thank you for covering for Justin today.
Absolutely. Always my pleasure to come on and talk movies. And you're talking about one of my favorite genres, comic book movies. And yeah, this is kind of a weird thing here in America because people tend to think of only Deadpool and Logan with the R rating, but we've got a pretty good long history of R rated comic book films and superhero movies before those. I feel like just because those were kind of more mainstream hits, they kind of don't think about all these other movies that were made. Especially people tend to forget that Blade is a comic book movie and was very successful and probably is responsible for us 20 plus years later still having comic book movies and where it's gone to now. I feel like Blade was a pretty big important factor into where the genre is now.
Oh, definitely. It has one of the best screenplays of any comic book movie. Yeah. So I wanted to ask a question. How does your rating system go in America by movies? So then we can understand what that means for R-rated movies.
Okay, so we have basically 4 main ratings. We used to have 5. I don't know if they even do NC-17 anymore. It kind of was like that. They created NC-17 to let you know it wasn't like a porno because there's an X rating and stuff for pornographic films. So NC-17 was meaning you had to be 17 to show up in the movie, but it kind of like made your movie be like blacklisted or have a bad mark on it. And I've actually never watched a movie that has been given this rating, but I don't 100% know if they even do that rating anymore. So we have 4 main ratings for our films that are released. We have rated G, which it says for general audiences, so they say it's appropriate for anyone. We have PG, which is parental guidance. I mean, pretty much you can go see a PG movie as long as you're like, they don't check you for a PG movie. They just let you know that there might be some material in this movie that a parent might want to find out before they take their kid to. And usually with a PG movie, you hear like a damn or a hell in the movie a couple of times, or it has some thematic elements that might be a little too mature, but usually PG now is just the general rating for a family film. There's very few G movies anymore. And then we have PG-13, which was created after Temple of the Doom came out, and we had someone's heart being ripped out on screen. So they decided we had to create a rating between PG and R. So PG-13 says that the material in the film may be unsuitable for someone under the age of 13, but still, you can be under 13 and watch a PG-13 movie. They don't like restrict you from seeing it. They're just letting you parents know that if your child's under 13, you may not want them to watch this. And then we have R, which stands for restricted, and it says no one under 17 permitted without an adult guardian or parent. And that's because it's either graphically violent, has a lot of curse words, or they say the F word more than once. You can't say the F word twice in a movie. That's an automatic R rating in America. Or deals with sexual content, it's going to get an R rating. But you could still see an R rating if your parent thinks it's okay for you to go with them, but you have to be with someone over the age of 17 to watch an R-rated movie.
Yeah, fair enough. That is fair enough. Yeah, so ours works a lot different here. According to the BBFC, who is in charge of the ratings in the UK, ours U, which means super for all, PG is same as you, parental guidance. Now, 12 is tricky because after the release of Spider-Man in 2002, they changed it to 12A, so if a child wants it, they can be accompanied by an adult, but the video releases still come under 12 for some reason. And then there's 15 for over 15s, 18 for adults, and for adult works it's R18, but we don't need to talk about them.
So, can someone under those ages go see that with a parent, or are they like, you can't see this movie? You're not old enough.
It's rated 12A.
Okay, so 15 and 18, you have to be of age to go see it.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah,
so
our rating
obviously-
system is made up by the MPAA, the Motion Picture Association of America.
Nice. Because obviously I was quite young when I went to see Spider-Man 2 in 2004. So obviously it was a good night anyway.
Yeah, they got PG-13 here, but again, we don't card anyone for anything under R, and still they will let a child see an R-rated movie. Well, now they have some theaters will say no child under a certain age, even with a parent or guardian. They'll say no child under 6, which depending on the R-rated movie, 6 is still pretty young, but those are the only ones but a lot of times they'll just give the parent the benefit of the doubt, like, well, it's your kid, but sometimes they'll say something and be like, I don't know if you want to take your kid to see this movie or not, but that's up to the theater.
Yeah, because Jurassic Park when it came out was a PG, and it was obviously said that nobody under 7 should watch them because they might get frightened by the dinosaurs. Which, I don't know, I feel like nowadays it would just be a straight up 12.
Yeah, it would, because it was PG-13 here. Which is funny because of how long ago Jaws came out. That was PG.
Yeah, a lot of people are surprised that it's more, that it's less than that's only a PG, and they say it should be more than a PG.
Yeah. But the rating systems were different back then, and we didn't even have a rating system till the 60s. Like before then, they didn't even rate movies. But back in the older days, we had it's called the Hays Code. They had like a code they had to follow what could and couldn't be in the movie. And as the film industry progressed and there were more independent licensing of what could and couldn't be allowed on screen, that's where the rating system kind of started.
Yeah, yeah. It's just as like nowadays with like superhero films, there are like restrictions, and that's personally why I feel like studios haven't really been taking risks until like now. I was thinking about what you said about Blade, how it like kind of created genre, but yet they kind of restricted themselves because Blade, let's just face it, there's a lot of death and there's a lot of blood, and I know they'll want to have children interested, but I know they can't show it, so they want to make it as kids. But like Killing Joke was a comic book for adults, you know. Take a child to see the Killing Joke cartoon film.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it. It's rough, and I tend to get mad when people think, and that's been the problem with the genre for so long because we had successful comic book movies before the Spider-Mans and X-Men's. We had a Batman franchise, we had a Superman franchise, but they were very very short-lived, and there were a few other obscure things, but it didn't quite take off till the 2000s. And I get upset when people think of it as just for children. And I know, but there's so much more of the art form than just superheroes. Like there's the great graphic novel Mouse and Persepolis, and there's Fun Home. There's so many comic books that deal with things that are more for teenagers and adults than they are for children, that people tend to put the comic book superhero in, and it took a while for it to become mainstream because like Watchmen is not for children, V for Vendetta is not for children.
Yes, I love V for Vendetta, but if I had a child, I would not show it them till they were 12.
Exactly, because it's a very mature and dark subject matter on top of the violence that's in it.
But don't get me wrong, it's a phenomenal film, but there are a lot of violent scenes that I don't think a child would watch. And if they rebooted it to make it more kid-friendly, it would just be terrible because it's not Alan Moore's vision they're basing it on. They're just kind of ripping it off.
Yeah. And he doesn't really care for the movie himself, but I think it's a pretty good adaptation. I know they took some liberties with what's going on with the politics between the graphic novel and the movie. And rewatching it last year during the whole, well, we're still in this pandemic, but with the pandemic and the election, it was like, oh, this is it too close to home right now.
Definitely. So I wanted to talk more about the films, I said the last 5 years, because I think Deadpool was one that started R-rated superhero trend and hasn't.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely kick-started kind of studios taking a chance and giving superhero movies the R rating, like because before they wouldn't do it, like Spawn PG-13 when it came out because they didn't think enough people would go see an R-rated movie, or they wanted more people to see it. And of course, with Deadpool's success, that's why Logan got to be R rating, and because they were trying to make the Wolverine rated R and they wouldn't let them do it, and then Deadpool made money, so they're like, okay, you can do the next Wolverine movie R rating and let him really unleash him at his full capacity.
You see, even if you just strip that Logan R-rated, it's still a good comic book movie because it's unique and it strips away kind of like the colourful superhero element makes it nice and gritty.
Yeah, well, Logan is like a Western that happens to be based on a comic book. Like it's got a little bit of that Western road picture vibe going for it.
Yeah, and I can think of about. I was thinking also about Kick-Ass as well in 2010. There was
Yeah,
that
for yeah, that was also a pretty big hit. Had a lot of controversy with it too, but yeah, it was a pretty big deal because and it was not just violent, but it was like over the top violent.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's what ruined the second one. It was more over the top.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I was kind of disappointed. Birds of Prey had a bit more to it. I said I don't mind Birds of Prey. It's just something about that needed adding to it.
Hmm. I enjoy Birds of Prey. I don't. I think its falter was trying to set up a Birds of Prey movie, but it's really a Harley Quinn movie, and it should have just been a Harley Quinn movie. But I guess they felt like they had to put characters in there that are more heroic because she's a villain. So well, I guess she's kind of an anti-hero, so to speak. But I don't know. I mean, it was nice to kind of set it up as a backdoor for Birds of Prey, whether it's a movie or a TV series. But I think them trying to include that kind of suffered because those characters don't get enough screen time or treatment because it's pretty much a Harley Quinn movie.
Yeah, yeah. And now you bring me on to the subject of why we're talking about R-rated movies. I watched The Suicide Squad last night. I really liked how how James Gunn was allowed to take risks and make it really violent because it works. Works that he's not making it violent for the sake of being violent. He's doing it because it works really well. And I feel like David Ayer should have had the same as James Gunn. He should have been able to take risks, let him make the film he wanted, and boom. But no, they had to make their mistake and let James Gunn fix it.
Yeah, and which is funny because they really tried to market that first Suicide Squad as like a Guardians, they're Guardians, and then they get the guy that did Guardians to do it and just kind of let him off, which was cool because they let him off the leash, so to speak, after he had gotten fired from Marvel, and they're like, go ahead and do what you want to do with this property. And I hope DC doesn't try to keep doing connected. Like, if they want to do the multiverse, that's fine. But I like these movies kind of being standalone and not having to be dependent on previous films.
Yes, that is exactly what I like, because it didn't really have like full continuity with Suicide Squad, the first one, or Birds of Prey. They were just like saying with Birds of Prey, she hints to Suicide Squad. She doesn't like replay them.
Yeah, and I want more of this. And if James Gunn wants to make more Suicide Squad movies, let's have it. I mean, I'm pumped that he's getting to do Guardians 3, but I just love that he created this wonderful world and wacky characters that I didn't even know existed and made you care about so many of them. And it's a plot that you want the Suicide Squad involved in. For whatever reason, that was another thing I didn't like about the first one was like, why are the Suicide Squad involved in this? This feels like a Justice League problem. You want them to do like off the books, stuff that's not actually, it didn't happen. Like, we need to go take out a dictator or do something that they can't know the government's involved in.
Or fight a giant starfish.
Yeah, or fight this giant starfish. Yeah. But yeah, the movie is exactly what you think James Gunn would be involved in. And they say from the beautiful twisted mind, and that's what it is. And I think most of the cast is great in it too.
I prefer Chris Elba to Will Smith.
I mean, yeah, I actually liked Will Smith as Deadshot, but yeah, Idris Elba is definitely, I think, a stronger actor, and I really like him in this movie. And I'm glad John Cena's got this part too, because he was just in the recent Fast and the Furious movie, and like he's like as interesting as a piece of soap in that film, and here he's so funny and charismatic and entertaining. So I'm like, why not use his talents? Because he can be fun on screen, and like in Fast 9, he's like doing nothing.
Definitely. He was kind of a good mix of like the right and the wrong stuff, and that's what I liked about him. And now I wanted to bring you on to another question. Do you see the future in R-rated superhero films?
I think there's always going to be an interest in a market for it. I don't know if they're all going to reach like Deadpool proportion box office sales, because you are unfortunately limiting your audience. But I mean, like this movie, the kids who want to see it that aren't going to get to see it in theaters, they're just going to watch it on HBO Max if their parents don't have a parental control on the profile. And I wonder how that's going to do with this box office. But yeah, I think there's a future because there's always a demand. And until the genre kind of falters a little bit and people get a little tired, but as long as they're creating inventive and interesting things, like, I mean, we just had a Watchmen TV show. We have The Boys. We had Invincible. You have Doom Patrol. So we're getting a lot of these meta takes on the superhero genre and like what it means to be a superhero. And even though this is technically a superhero movie, it's really more of like a man on a mission movie. This is like if the Dirty Dozen was a comic book, you know?
Still need to see the Dirty Dozen. You just reminded me. Do you think the new
Yeah,
Batman film's going to be on?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think it'll be PG-13 because Batman is a mainstream superhero. He's arguably he might be the biggest superhero out there. So they're going to want that audience. Now, there may be like deleted scenes or an R-rated cut maybe, but I don't think, especially in America, I don't think they're going to give it an R rating.
Because you can do an R-rated Batman movie realistically.
Well, you could, because he's basically the same type of character as a Daredevil or a Punisher, except he doesn't kill people per se. You could successfully do an R-rated Batman movie, but what they'll probably do is just make sure the violence is not so extreme or graphic, and they'll probably keep the curse words to damn and hell and shit and just not put the F word in there.
Yeah. I'd like to see them do more supervillain films like Joker and Venom, because make them R-rated, because you kind of expect the bad guys to do bad stuff.
Yeah, it would be nice to see, and it doesn't always have to be like the self-serious version of what the Joker is, or even the extreme wacky of what Venom is. But I think there's a balance, and it'll be interesting because I think that'll help keep the genre alive if we kind of explore different avenues of what a comic book movie can be than other than a guy dressed in tights fighting crime.
Yeah, that would be. Yeah, I wanted to, after seeing Joker, I wanted there to be the film and a Bane film and a Catwoman film.
You know, we have a Catwoman movie. I've never seen it. I hear it's terrible. I kind of wish because they tried to develop one with Michelle Pfeiffer back in the 90s, and that never went anywhere.
Yeah, I've not seen it myself, and I don't really want to.
From what I hear, we're not missing anything, and but yeah, a Bane movie, that would be interesting. Would you like to like a backstory, or would you like it to be closer to his comic origins than what was in the Nolan film?
I think I'd like have him as like a top like wrestling champ, and he either like has he has like disease, and it's and he's got to like pay the money, turns to life a crime, and then at the end he gets the mask, kind of like keeps him alive, kind of thing. That'd be
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind that. I actually really like Tom Hardy's Bane. I know a lot of people hate the voice and everything, but I think he was one of the best parts of that movie, in my opinion. And I think Bane is a more interesting villain than he gets credit for because he's actually both brain and brawn, which is rare for a supervillain.
Yeah, that doesn't really make sense of why he's a henchman in Batman and Robin.
Oh, they just threw him in because he was so popular and they didn't know what to do with him. They just saw the general look, giant dude with jacked muscles and a luchador mask. So
Yeah,
kind of like
because
it's kind of like why Venom gets thrown into Spider-Man 3 is because they demanded a popular character.
is it the same with Taskmaster and Black Widow?
I feel so. I feel so. Have you seen Black Widow?
Yeah, I'm not gonna be honest with you. I was kind of disappointed in it a little bit.
I get why you're disappointed. I found it for what it was entertaining. I think especially the supporting cast, Florence Pugh and Rachel Weisz and David Harbour really make the movie for me. I feel it's a shame that they took this long to get a Black Widow movie, and I understand if people feel like it's just kind of filler and you're like, okay, I'm ready for the new stuff. But yeah, I feel like Taskmaster was just thrown in there because people like that character. I could have not had it in there and it'd have been fine.
Because I feel like Black Widow could have been R-rated because a lot of fans wanted it to be R-rated, and this is what fans of the MCU want. They want an R-rated MCU film. I don't think that's going to happen for a very long time.
It's not gonna happen. They did say Deadpool 3 would be rated R, but it would not be loosely connected to the MCU. So that makes me wonder if the new Blade will be PG-13, which you can do Blade and not have it be rated R, even though the original films with Wesley Snipes were rated R. You can do a vampire movie and not be rated R, but I know there's probably fans that want an R-rated version of Blade. And if they ever get around to doing the Punisher for the 1,000th time, like I don't know how they would avoid that one not being R-rated.
I've not seen either of the Punisher films. Which one's the better one?
Well, I think I'm more of the unpopular opinion. I enjoy the Thomas Jane version more, but a lot of people have a soft spot for Lexi Alexander's version. It's a little more over the top and cartoonish, so it's more comic booky than the other one. And Ray Stevenson does look more like Frank Castle, especially than Thomas Jane does, though I love Thomas Jane. And there's some good performances, like Wayne Knight plays Micro. He's pretty good in it. And there's some really gnarly kills, but there's some humor in it that just doesn't work for me. There's also a terrible 80s version. We have 3 Punisher movies. There's one in the 80s made with Dolph Lundgren. And then we have a Netflix series, which is really good with John Bernthal as the Punisher.
Yeah, I saw him in Daredevil season 2. He is brilliant as a Punisher.
So, but yeah, I have a soft spot for that Thomas Jane one, even though it's probably not that good of a movie either. I just kind of like it. But, some people say all the Punisher movies are bad. It's all subjective. But That was another R-rated superhero movie, but I guess it didn't do great. It did okay. I guess it did okay enough to make another one.
I've just thought of a good example of an R-rated, like Suicide Squad, an R-rated movie which has a director that is fully artist place. I'm talking about Guillermo del Toro's Blade 2.
Oh yeah, I don't know if I like Blade 2 more than Blade 1. I'm gonna have to watch Blade 2 here in about the next month or so, so I'll see. It's probably certainly better directed for sure. And I think the villains are better because that first Blade movie is very 90s now if you watch it. But when I was a young preteen boy, I thought Blade was like the coolest movie ever. But yeah, Guillermo del Toro doing Blade 2 was a good adaptation, and I like it. I think his Hellboy movies are better, but I enjoy Blade 2.
Yeah, yeah. And that's why, even if it's not like an R-rated, I still want direct still have their artistic visions on superhero movies. He does a great job with the 4 films.
Yeah, and I think the best Marvel movies, honestly, even though none of them are R rating, those tend to be more my favorite Marvel movies, is where they actually let the director, you get to see their style. Like, that's why I love the Guardians, because it's so much James Gunn. And like Black Panther, they allowed Ryan Coogler to make what he wanted. And that's why Thor Ragnarok's the best Thor, because Taika saw the potential in Chris Hemsworth's, sense of humor and making the movie more light, breezy, and fun and a little weird. And I like Iron Man 3 because that's full Shane Black. So those tend to be the Marvel movies I think that are really good because you get to see the director's
I'm not
vision.
really a big fan of Iron Man 3, but I kind of like how Shane Black uses his style, like the Christmas set.
Do you not like it because of what it did with the Mandarin character, or do you just not like it because he's not Iron Man very much in the movie?
I don't like it because it's not directed by Favreau. I kind of wish he directed it.
So do you prefer Iron Man 2 over Iron Man 3?
Controversially, Iron Man 2 is my favorite.
Oh, yeah, that is controversial because a lot of people say that's like the worst Marvel movie.
No, I can think of a lot that are worse.
I mean, I think it's fine. It's entertaining. I don't think there's truly been a bad MCU movie, but there's some that feel more generic than others for sure.
And that's why I think that they should take the risk and let one be R-rated.
Well, yeah, if it's suitable for the character. I don't think everything needs to be rated R, but if
course.
it works for, like, you could do an R-rated Daredevil movie. You could do an R-rated Luke Cage movie. I think, Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, those are fine as PG-13. But yeah, you could do these certain characters that kind of go into dark, like the Moon Knight series that Disney Plus is doing. That could be an R-rated movie if they wanted to. I don't know what they're going to do with that, but that could be R-rated.
Did you ever see Jessica Jones? Because that could work as a reboot of a film or something and be R-rated.
For sure. I need to finish the last season. I never finished the last season. I really loved that first season, and the second season was fine. But that first season is on par with the Daredevil series, in my opinion. And I think David Tennant was amazing as the villain.
I'm glad who David Tennant is because Justin didn't.
Well, I mean, he probably doesn't watch as much British TV as I do, and I love Doctor Who, so, I guess that makes more sense why you said he was underrated, because I guess only Whovians in America know who Tennant is.
Basically. So yeah, is there anything else you to say about R-rated superhero movies?
I mean, there's more of these than you think, and there's some really good ones. One we didn't talk about that I think is worth checking out, even though it might feel dated now because it's very like hot topic-y of what Hot Topic is. I don't know if they have Hot Topic stores in the UK, but they used to be like a goth-centric store. They've kind of turned into something else here.
Yeah,
And
a hot topic.
that's The Crow. The Crow was a really solid movie that's based on a comic book that was R-rated.
I watched that for the first time last year for my Halloween reviews, and I enjoyed it. And I felt sorry for Brandon Lee.
Yeah, it's really tragic. I think he would have been up there as like a Keanu Reeves level of action star had he survived and got to live the success of that film. Although I really like the Carl Urban version of Dread, even though it kind of no one saw it and they kind of accused it of being the ripoff of The Raid because they had a similar plot. But I really enjoy that movie, and I wish he gets to play the character again, even if it's in a television series.
Yeah, yes, I want another Dread.
I mean, yeah, there's a lot of good comic book movies that are more adult centric. I mean, I already mentioned Watchmen and V for Vendetta. 300, it's entertaining for what it is. If you don't like Zack Snyder or his sensibilities, I understand, but that's a fun.
What about A History of Violence? Because that is a biographic novel.
Oh my God, you're right. Yes, that movie is so good. I love that movie. I think that's great. It's one of my favorite Cronenberg films, even though it's very different from what people associate Cronenberg with. And Eastern Promises, even though that's not based on a comic book, is good as well. And of course, Sin City, the first Sin City movie was amazing. That was a technical marvel and really put you into the world of the comic book. It's too bad Frank Miller's a crazy person in real life because that was a really well done film. And I actually have a soft spot for the sequel. It's not bad to me. Not as good as the first, but yeah.
It took me to watch to get into the end of the first Sin City. I've not seen the second, but I would like to watch them both back to back next time Sin City.
Yeah, it'll probably be even worse, I guess, probably watching it back to back, I imagine. But I just liked being back in the world. And I think Rodriguez did some good casting there, even though he's basically just copying the graphic novels. It's still fun for me.
I like how he directed and did the cinematography. That was cool. And I like how Quentin Tarantino directed a segment in the film.
Yeah, he did that sequence between Clive Owen and Benicio del Toro in the car. And yeah, Robert Rodriguez wears all the hats in his movies. He directs them, he writes them, he produces them, he edits, he does the music, he caters for the cast.
John Carpenter also does that too.
Yes, he does. That's I don't think Rodriguez is quite to the level of Carpenter's heyday, but I respect him in that regard that he does like the journeyman of everything that Carpenter did.
See, if Carpenter was retired, he'd make a perfect R-rated superhero film.
I mean, we could argue that Escape from New York is an R-rated superhero film, right? I mean, Snake Plissken's kind of a superhero.
In a way, yeah. Yeah, I see where you're coming from. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And obviously these superhero films tend to from like westerns and samurai films, so they have rated influences, even if they're not R-rated.
Oh, I thought of another one that I actually watched in prep. I didn't get to watch as many of these movies as I wanted because there's too many, and it's a broad topic. But What are your thoughts on Constantine? Because I know the movie delves from the comics, but I actually enjoy that movie.
I think that was one of the first films. Keanu Reeves actually isn't a bad actor.
So you don't have a problem with them changing the character from a Brit to an American?
Well, it's his take on the character. I would like to see a reboot movie version with a Brit. Probably Colin Farrell might be the best choice, but I like Keanu's version.
Yeah, he would be great. I can't remember if he was attached with the Guillermo del Toro when they were going to do Justice League Dark, but there is a rebooted version with a British actor. It was a short-lived television series, and he's popped back up as the character in some of those CW DC shows, and he's done some voice work for animated films. He's actually pretty good.
He is. He kind of suits him perfect.
And I'm really excited to see Janae. I'm probably saying, is it Jenna Coleman from Doctor Who playing like Constantine's descendant in the Sandman series?
That's the one series I'm looking forward to the most. I've been waiting for that series for 10 years.
I mean, there's people out here that have been waiting for 30 years for this thing. It's been in development hell for 2 decades at least.
Yeah, and I'm hoping like that's how like the future. Like I think we've come to a good conclusion that ratings don't really matter with films. It's more about the artistic kind of contribution.
Yeah, I think if you get a visionary person, and it doesn't have to be an auteur director, it can just be someone who has a vision, whether it's the writer or the director or even a producer, somebody who has a vision for the world and that they're able to do it without having to check the boxes that a studio or television studio wants for the product. Because, I mean, we have so many successful television series that are more R-rated centric as well that we've mentioned earlier. So whether it's TV or movie, however they can move, I think there's a future because comic books, there's just so many things. It's like anime. It kind of dips its toe in every genre. So there's everything for different people's taste.
Yeah, definitely. The only issue I have with controllers giving it too much because I know Patton James ruined Wonder Woman 1984 a little bit.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that film either. I was really disappointed because the first one was so good. And you could argue that Tim Burton's Batman Returns was too much control, even though I love how bonkers that movie is.
Yeah, and obviously, an example of an artistic director directing a superhero film and turning out well is the 2003 Hulk film. I kind of like what Ang Lee was trying to do, but he made it a bit too cheesy.
I do appreciate him. Like, the only other director that's kind of done that with a comic book movie is Edgar Wright with Scott Pilgrim, how they kind of make it look like an actual comic book and make you feel like you're in the world of the comic book. I don't think Ang Lee's Hulk is a bad movie. I think it's just maybe he didn't quite get what he was trying to do, but I kind of dig what he was trying to do with it. And I think it's a better movie than people remember. I think it's a better movie than the Edward Norton one.
Agreed on that.
Because that's a generic superhero to me film. Whereas Ang Lee's, he at least had a vision. Maybe it didn't quite come together, but at least he was trying. And I'm always up for a director to try something, even if it doesn't work, than just something that's generic. Like that's why I love the Wachowskis. They swing for the fences every time, even if their movies don't always work for you.
Definitely. And I'm the same with Christopher Nolan. Even if he does make a bad movie, I always like how he tries to get everything perfect. Wes Anderson and Stanley Kubrick are like that as well.
Yeah, I think, yeah, you may not like their style or their substance of what they're doing, but at least it's something interesting. Like, I'm not the biggest Tenet fan, but I don't think it's a bad movie because he was trying something, and it's a beautifully made movie, and I love the score.
Yeah, I love Tenet. I love Tenet. And yeah, I think that's about for today. Cody, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, you're welcome. Absolutely. Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me, and I look forward. I'm working on my dates now, so if I get another guest, I'll probably message you soon to see what your availability is in November for Moonrise Kingdom.
Brilliant. I can't wait. I can't wait. And thank you all for listening. Thank you to the Patreon members, Ben, Sean, and the Comedy Filmmakers. You make sure you give this video a like, subscribe, and what's your favourite R-rated superhero movie? Let us know what other topics you want me and or Cody Austin to do. Right, Cody, thank you for coming on.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.